From KUNC and the NPR network, this is In The NoCo. I'm Erin O'Toole. Colorado recently reached a major clean energy milestone. In the first 3 months of this year, the majority of its electricity came from renewable sources like wind, solar, and geothermal. 53% to be exact. That's according to an article from the news website Big Pivots. And it marks a significant step toward Colorado's goal of getting to 100% emission-free electricity by the year 2050. But despite hitting this threshold, energy officials say the most challenging part of the transition may still lie ahead. And big questions remain about how to keep the grid reliable while keeping costs down. Will Tour, executive director of the Colorado Energy Office, has led the state's clean energy strategy since 2019. He talked with me about how Colorado reached this point and what it will take to get all the way to 100% renewable energy. Here is that conversation.
No, I think it's really exciting to see renewable energy become the dominant source of electricity in the state. If you were to go back to 2004, only about 2.5% of our electricity was coming from renewables, and about 70% was coming from coal. And at the time, people thought of wind and solar as alternative energy. Well, it's not alternative anymore. It's now the largest source of electricity in the state. Obviously, huge reductions in pollution and greenhouse gases are associated with that transition. And we're going to continue to see more and more renewables and more battery storage on the grid over the next several years. We anticipate that by the end of the decade, our largest utility, Xcel Energy, will be nearly 80% renewable, and that statewide will probably be somewhere a little under 70% of all electricity. That the pollution associated with electricity generation will be about 80% or 82% lower than our baseline from 2005.
So significant progress is happening here. What do you think mattered most in getting to this point? I mean, do you think it was state policy, technology advances, or something else?
It's kind of all of the above. If you were to look back to 2004, when Colorado voters adopted a renewable portfolio standard requiring utilities to achieve 10% renewables by 2020, at the time, a lot of folks were arguing that was impossible. And there was a lot of opposition from utilities. Xcel Energy, for instance, spent a lot of money opposing that ballot measure back in 2004. But once it passed, to their credit, they said, we're going to do our best effort to achieve these goals. And they quickly found that the goals were way easier than they thought they were going to be. And Colorado utilities, especially Xcel, actually really led the way on working with academic and national lab researchers on things like wind forecasting to figure out ways to make it cheaper and easier to manage the grid with variable wind generation on it. And at the same time, we'd gone from wind and solar being more expensive 20 years ago to being the cheapest sources of electricity on the grid today.
Interesting. I want to talk about the hurdles to getting toward 100% emission-free energy by the year 2050. What do you see right now as the biggest challenge to getting there?
So it depends whether by 100% you truly mean 100% or whether you mean something like pretty close, the 94, 95%. We've done some modeling looking out to 2040 and 2050 and projecting big increases in electricity demand over that time and looking at just what's the cheapest way of meeting that growing electric demand. The cheapest approach would primarily add a lot of wind, solar, and batteries, and then use natural gas generation as a reliability resource when you absolutely need it to keep the lights on.
Okay.
That would get you to somewhere around 95% emission reduction by 2050 just by trying to minimize the cost of new generation. Now, to get all the way to zero, we know that we will need emerging technologies, things like advanced nuclear and advanced geothermal and new forms of long duration storage like iron air batteries. All of those are technologies that exist today, but that really need to be scaled, and we need to see how the costs come down over time to be able to really deploy them at scale to get all the way to zero.
Reliability is often a question with renewable energy. The sun is not always shining, the wind doesn't always blow. How much can Coloradans realistically expect the power grid to remain reliable if it is powered by sources that are not always on?
It turns out if you look at the actual sources of power outages, almost all of the power outages that you see have to do with the state of the distribution grid or with extreme weather knocking out power lines. So all of the reliability issues that we've had in Colorado have really been around either public safety power shutoffs associated with wildfire danger or with damage to distribution lines. So far, the sort of biggest issues that we've seen have been around, the unreliability of our major coal plants. So if you look, for instance, at last summer during the hot days, the biggest issue was unplanned outages from coal plants. And the other issue that we've seen has been that there's just been a variety of things that have slowed down building new generation, that ranging from supply chain challenges to some of the new efforts by the Trump administration to make it really hard to get any federal permits that are required for solar or especially for wind, all the way down to some of the sort of not in my backyard type of opposition that's leading to sort of court cases around being able to build, especially some of the transmission that we need for generation. So those are really the issues that we're seeing as being the key reliability issues. It's not really about renewables.
Okay. For a lot of Coloradans, really the amount of their monthly bill is more important than where the energy comes from. How do you make green energy affordable?
The interesting thing here is that, in fact, clean energy is the cheapest energy on the grid. Wind and solar used to be new, expensive forms of electricity. They aren't anymore. They're now the lowest cost sources of electricity that you can add, which is why if you look around the world, about 97% of net new generation built worldwide was wind and solar. That's not because people were trying to be green. That's because these are resources that you could build quickly and that are cheap. And so there certainly are a lot of challenges with utility affordability right now. In Colorado, we have an aging distribution system, and we've got a lot of investments needed in wildfire resiliency.
Will Torr is Executive Director of the Colorado Energy Office. He spoke with me about Colorado reaching an important renewable energy milestone. We'll include a link to the Big Pivots article where you can read more. That's in our show notes and at KUNC.org. That's it today for In The NoCo. I'm Erin O'Toole. Thanks so much for listening.